Hello and welcome to a discussion video. Regina. So since Lights Out re-released again, 'cause with the changes and stuff they did, yesterday's story set, of course for the Roman Reigns belt, the modern era belt for WrestleMania Forever, it got me thinking of sort of how bad they actually messed up with Lights Out. um, Regarding that, to the point where I made a thread about it, and I basically called it in the most basic nutshell: remove Lights Out, Deal of Destiny, Kick Out, and Real Term. And I just said the title says it all, and it's true. And I'll talk about there was a statement that I made um regarding this after being asked by a community manager. And it was. I'm just gonna talk about it really in this because I think this statement should go out generally. I think this should go out for people to see, whether they are big YouTubers, not YouTubers, just community members, or people who aren't in the Discord and stuff. I think they should see this and spark really discussion regarding the sort of future of these modes. Of course, referring to Dear Destiny, Real Turn, Lights Out, Kick Out, and stuff. And I understand that, of course, I'm not affiliated, I'm not biased, I do not promote anything of such. I never will say they need to spend money, ever. I would never say that. I will buy packs, I will show things, I will do things for content, research, and stuff like that. And sometimes there is just a time that you just have to think about it, really. Of course, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, whether you agree with my statement, disagree with my statement, that I'm basically going to be talking about here, which is this thing that's highlighted. And I'm just going to talk about sort of the future of Supercard, really, and what I think they could do and should do, really. And I talk about it a lot in this. Of course, if you're on the 2K Discord already, have a look at the thread in Supercard feedback, which is just called Remove Lights Out, Deal Destiny, Kick Out, Real Turn. You'll see my statement, of course, if you want to have a full read of it. I'll do a full sort of explanation of it type thing in a sort of like probably a 15-20 minute sort of thing. However, in this, I do hope that some of this does go out to some level of feedback, some level of ideas, some level of concept, and stuff. Hopefully it does anything. I doubt it will. But of course, like as always, if you can share this out to people, try and get a big conversation sparking, then all is very much appreciated. So regarding all of the modes, as I say, I start off mentioning Real Turn, Kick Out, as they're not the most they are not used in WrestleMania Forever anyway, but they have been used prior. Of course, Kick Out being released in Titans last year, Real Turn getting released at WrestleMania Forever last year for the People's Championship belt, and we sort of run into a very similar issue where the WrestleMania Forever last year brought in a lot of modes that should not be in the game, that I think shouldn't be in the game anyway. That, of course, one of them being Lights Out, the other one being Real Turn. As I say, of course, I know there are people who do like Real Turn, and, fine for them, of course. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but I've basically just put, just regarding my genuine sort of ethics. So, for context, while I wrote the statement, while I looked at this, I basically took this from an ethics, a gameplay, a monetized point of view, and a general consumer fan base, and sort of it's not really a business head situation. Whereas I have not criticised any devs or anything, I have mentioned them, but I have not criticised them or anything like that. But firstly, Real Turn, Kick Out, straight up gamble. I've put they are straight up gambling, which is of course negative brand image in terms of economic instability. Of course, with everything going on in the world, do we really need to be pushing these out? Of course, Real Turn has been seen before this season. Kick Out actually hasn't been seen since Unhinged, since Titans. But again, it shouldn't be in the game. It is just promoting basic gambling. And I've this sort of my ethics side of things where I basically said kids kids are playing this game. They shouldn't be promoting gambling um, in any shape or form. Of course, they are entitled to. Of course, the way they make money is by monetization through packs, equipment, interactive packs such as Real Turn Kickout, Deal of Destiny. All of them do make money in some ways. But they do all make money, and I've sort of made a sign up saying interactive packs must have some level of skill. For example, Puzzler, Table Flip, Foley's Files are some of the best received interactive packs. Just generally across the community, they don't involve gambling. Instead, skill mean the more you do, the more rewards. I can. So Puzzler, you complete more puzzles, you get better. Well, you should get better odds at rewards. It has actually been it did get nerfed towards the end of its life cycle anyway, where you went from like 5 or 6 cards to 2 on completion, which is a change I still don't understand why they did. Table flip is based on the amount of moves it takes you to complete. The more moves it takes, the worse rewards you get. And Foley's Files, a very similar thing to table flip, whereas your performance, you get higher score, you can optimize it, and you can actually spend credits to retry a stage if you wanted to, which, isn't gambling. That is, if you think you could do better or you want to try and get a higher score, it is there. However, you can get the best rewards for free. Absolutely, I've done it. When it released in the WrestleMania Forever event last year, I did get top rewards a lot without having to spend any credits. And, they involve some skill. They involve some level of, with puzzles, you got to make the picture, and other stuff like that. Which I do also agree with the fan base that it is better received. It is better on terms of fairness. It doesn't promote gambling. You can buy extra ones if you want to, but that is the nature of packs. If they do that, they would have to change their whole storefront, which is something that they would never do. It would make very little to 0 cents onto it. But alas, that was just my sort of take on that. I didn't really go into it too much because I actually went over the character limit with what I initially wanted to put, so I did have to shorten it. Especially to get down to the sort of conclusion side things. Deal of Destiny. Of course, Deal of Destiny is currently out right now for the Atchidar belt, which is the second belt that you need for Becky Lynch. The WrestleMania 35 flashback card with the double title with Becky 2 belts. And I've basically just put, as you may be aware, there's been a lot of negative comments on this from general player base. Firstly, the idea that it's rigged and that upon completion you're not guaranteed the belt. That you need the belt for, of course, progression in the WrestleMania Forever event. Which is wrong, especially as you can add up to 1 to 2 credits if extremely unlucky, and once concerns over odds being way too low, despite being expensive for some to completion. So to complete it. Other threads have addressed this issue, should no longer be in the game. This has been an issue since Beat the Oracle. That's when it came out. We had The Undertaker. And I know a fair amount of people did get an Undertaker. I didn't. But knowing the exact idea of just higher or lower, and you are basically going into a casino, and you are probably going to have to spend credits to complete it. You can do it for free, which I have done personally. However, it is unlikely that you are going to be able to do it for free, and you are going to never have to spend credits. There is actually this thread here regarding Deal of Destiny, which has been generally concerned, especially it's not really about the skill side of things, but it is mainly of the belt. Like the odds of the belt being terrible, especially knowing that they gave out the Golden Era belt for free, and from Rule of the Ring, which you have had for free, which you can get for free. With Deal of Destiny, the odds, they actually had to increase the odds from 10% to 15%, which it's currently 15, of course, for Brock and for Brock and the belt, and you go from 10 to 15, it's not even that much, and people are still complaining. I think it should be a guarantee on completion. of the belt, especially the belt. Brock, I am fine being in a bonus chance because you don't need it. Whereas, for LTE progression, there's still a load of issues with the more recent LTEs is where you basically have to spend in order to complete it, or you had to get very lucky. In this instant, in this WrestleMania Forever, but I'll talk about it in a review or on stream or whatever. And you have to be very lucky to A, get a bonus chance, and B, to actually get the belt and not get the superstar. The only guarantees there is Rule the Ring. On completion, you are guaranteed the golden belt. Builder pack, if you get the wheel, you could get Triple H or the belt. The belt is got a better chance than Triple H. However, for some, it can still be a difficulty to even get to the the spinner, the actual wheel itself, and let alone getting the getting the belt and stuff. Of course, Rule the Ring has been improved a lot from being a free-to-play mode and stuff. But it's still not ideal in this sense. Then I talk about Lights Out, and Lights Out is my biggest issue with the game at the minute, especially with how it released. And the changes that they made. If you don't know what the changes are, they basically made it so if you get a slot, so you actually get a piece of the puzzle, so to speak, you get your pick back. So if I had 24 picks, I picked, let's say, Ivar, and he was on the board, and I would still have 24 picks. However, they have increased the amount of X's that you can actually get, as I mentioned here, but I'll just talk about it, I'll just read it, because it basically just sums up anything I have to say. I don't understand how the higher-ups and the feedback have somehow made the pack go worse. Firstly, it's considerably more expensive, at 1,000 credits more, which it is. At its worst last time, I think it was around the 1.5 to 2,000 mark. And now it's 2.5 to 3k at its very worst, because there is an uneven number of potential things that you can actually get. I got this issue yesterday, where I had to spend over 1,000 credits just to finish it. And there was only 2 slots left for 1,000 credits, which, in my opinion, is a scam. At its, as I say, 1,000 more is its worst. And not only that, you actually, on completion of Lights Out, you only get 4 chances of the belt, and 5 chances if you get the collection bonus. Which, as I'm making this video, we don't know whether the collection pack resets. If it does not, there's going to be even more backlash than what there, originally was. I would imagine, because then you are very paid to win focus, and even from that, you only get 4 chances, and the highest is 15% from the actual board, whereas the collection has 20. But you only get 4 chances. For the Rock, you actually get 5 completion on the actual completion pack. If you do complete it, you do get 5 chances. Again, it's highest. I think it's 15-20%. And that is on completion, which by then you are most likely 2k credits down, about 2k credits down, unless you are either really lucky or really unlucky, and you can actually be up to 3k credits down because of it, depending. Which I've basically said that if you complete, that it's ridiculous in the fact that if you complete the mode in itself, you're 1.5k down anyway. I would highly just recommend keep the board the same as it was, but have the system in. That's all I think they had to do to make it a little bit more accessible. Does it mean it would have been perfect? Definitely not. The perfect way of fixing it is removing the gambling aspect and making it skill focused rather than luck focused. However, it has also been known that the RNG focus modes, such as Lights Out, Real Term, Deal of Destiny, etc., have probably made the most money in terms of retries. Hound is also the one that sort of tends to be a little bit less chanced. When they less chance at something, you have to go again. Unless you as a player, of course, don't. Which in WrestleMania if you're being completely free to play, currently you have 14 free chances to get that belt, which even to get a chance at the belt, you actually need a column. If you get a rogue, you only get a chance at the rock. Hence why I say you only get 4 chances. On the collection, you get 5. But even then, the collection is 30, and the maximum that you can get per run is 16. So you inherently, you will only get 16 out of 30 on top of potential, which even then, filling that collection pack can take days, especially if it does reset for free to play. You ain't doing it, otherwise you are spending 2 to 3k credits up front to complete it, on top of any extra stuff that you may get and may not get. Like, you could have the whole time and fully just have zero rocks, 0 belts, which is, of course, worst case scenario and is almost ridiculous. Of course, I talk about, the price ratio being a downgrade. Of course, feel free to, as I'm speaking, feel free to read it. On top of having more X's, which is what I mentioned earlier, they increase the amount of X's to, I think it's probably about, I actually don't know the amount, but it's been higher quite a bit, to the point where you are needing at least 2,000 credits, almost 3,000 on top of it, which is actually quite destructive, really. And of course, I do talk about the if the belt, if the if for the collection pack with the 30 pulls, it could take days, and even that doesn't guarantee the belt, and if it doesn't reset, that's completely redundant, and only helps pay to wins. I've talked about that in the free to play approach, in saying that if it does reset, you have to complete it twice, most of it twice. And that can cost, again, up to 3,000, 4,000 credits, which free-to-plays, of course, but regarding the missing out side things, they actually need the belt in order to get Roman Reigns. And on top of that, you also have such issues such as Deal of Destiny, where the odds are also terrible. Builder Pack and Roll the Ring are a little bit more soft with it, because they are relatively cheap. However, they also do hold 0 guarantees. I'd say it's also predatory. The Rock having 6 chances. So the 6th chance is that collection pack that I've mentioned here. 6 chances. Of course, the 4 from the Rose, and then the completion, and then the collection. That's where the 6 comes from. Of course, the belt is 4. Of course, I do say 5 here, but that is including collection bonus as well. Which I've also said with the collection war bonus, free to play were like struggling completing anyway. Now this bit actually got cut off, so I did have to sort of narrow it down. I'll talk about it a bit more. I have talked about it more in this. I said overall all of these, so referencing of course all 4 modes, are predatory, anti-consumer, and more focused on profit maximization. The higher ups and devs need to start listening to Playbase and bring back more skill-related modes such as Puzzler to help support free-to-plays and pay-to-wins. And of course, someone who is a pay-to-win player, I am one of them. However, I also do understand the economic side of things. I understand the business side of things. I also look from an ethics side of things. And this stuff, for, your free-to-plays and your pay-to-wins, etc., are, very, very anti-consumer. You are basically forcing the play base out if you are doing this. Of course, you do have FOMO, and the fear of missing out and stuff, which is, going to be a lot of things. However, FOMO isn't an excuse for what has happened. Of course, I'm going to look at the higher ups here. I'm not going to look at the devs. I think the devs, of course, the higher ups will have the same regarding, making modes such as how they are. Again, they give the green light. Of course, if they don't like it, they'll want to change. I think that's what we're seeing more and more with the recent LTs anyway. You look at the Christmas event last year. This season really. That bug didn't get fixed until the last week, and by the time that was finished, there was no modes, nothing of that, and which was not great. So, and of course, for those who don't know, profit maximization benefits the business, but does hurt the consumer, in which it is generally more expensive on the consumer to actually buy something, of course, raising their prices just so they can make profit. They're basically narrowing that thin line onto how much will someone be willing to spend to get something. And in all these contexts, there's no guarantees. The only guarantee is that you are guaranteed to lose money, whatever happens from credits. And so, of course, if it's stored credits, you are still losing out on money and stuff because of your credits do represent money. It's one of them where you basically fall into a sort of basically you fall into a hole, and there's no winning out of it when it comes to it. And it doesn't come to a part it doesn't come to a part where the player is actually better off. The only times the player is better off is skill-based game modes and such modes such as Walk the Ropes. Walk the Ropes really good in the free-to-play aspect. You're at least guaranteed something. It has some level of skill. Of course, there is some level of luck involved as well. But even then, Walk the Ropes generally is rewarding both ways. You will probably get something. Of course, there are going to be people who are not lucky and will fall into this said issue. However, Lights Out, any mode where there is zero guarantees and high price points, what they are, such as especially Lights Out. Lights Out's the worst for it. Real Turn and Kick Out can also be really bad for it as well. Deal of Destiny is also very predatory as well in this regard. To basically say there is no guarantee in saying that you are going to get something good at the odds of 20%. 20% at the most, in some cases 15%, which is outrageous. And bear in mind, you have two bonus chances. One of them is a card that that is irrelevant for the WrestleMania Forever event, except the card that came with the mode, and that's about it. If you, let's say, you do Deal of Destiny, you get you get a bonus chance. That could either be the Attitude Era Belt, which is the ideal and what people want, and it could also be Brock Lesnar. It could also be both, and I have had both on the stream before, but it can be both. But you have to be extremely lucky to get that, and you have to be in a very fortunate circumstance in order, to actually get one of them, let alone two of them. So the price to reward ratio is not there. And Lights Out, I think, does it the worst with the 4 chances. Three of the packs practically useless because the highest percentage is 15. So all the others are lower than 50. I think one is 10, one's 5, probably the one's 1. If it's like the other bronze packs and stuff, then it would be like 1, 3, 5, 10, something like that. But even then, them odds are still really low. Inconsiderate, and the only thing about Lights Out that I could say would have been better is if they just kept the board the same. The collection bonus they didn't even need, and I would just say revert it back to how it was, but just keep the system of you get a board, you get a pull on the board, you get an additional thing, you get your pit back, and that board is the same length, because then you are making it cheap. On an average anyway, you probably keep it at the same price, but it seems more cheaper, and it can actually have a high chance of being cheaper as well, especially if you get on a decent street, get about 8 or 9 or maybe 10, something like that out of the 16. Bear in mind, you only need 16 of them, so you get over half. I'm not saying you are gonna fall out of the 1,500 credit mark, but it removes this 1,000 credits. The 1,000 credits was released. It is out because of the sheer amount of, picks on that board. And that is a issue I think that's an issue that is easily preventable. I think some QA testing could have gone into that to say, well, it's more costly for the player base, and the player base is already annoyed at us because of Destiny reward drops and the price of it as well, and the reward isn't really much. And I think the general aspect here is that, especially this season anyway, I'm just gonna use what other people say. There is some general agreements with what I've said. And some other also put into words. Someone thinks like that it's slightly better. I'm on the opposite side. I think it's actually worse because of the price point. But again, it's very unnecessary. To have the price be that way. But of course, of course, like I say, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But someone agrees with me and said this tier's made a lot of the game mods worse, mainly because of greed. That is, I look at lights out for that. Granted, Builder Pack is decent, but then the big rewards are like 15k credits are gone. I think that's the cost of it being free to play. Just rather disappointing that the hard work put in doesn't seem to be rewarding. WrestleMania should have been an action-packed warden tier, but it's been so lackluster. We've had 3 QR codes, one of which was held back well after WrestleMania, and that was the gold QR code. Many game mods making them unrewarding, like so. Honestly, Deal with Destiny could be put in there as well. I question if you lot play the game yourselves, because if you do want to implement such changes, I'm aware and even I'm frustrated at the lack of creativity, passion that's gone in the last few years, and I agree with this. I think there is a lack of QA testing. I think us, the player base, should not be the guinea pigs to the changes that they do make. Of course, such things that are harmless to the player base, such as like the image changing thing, that is harmless to us as a player base, because of course, people will be excluded out of that. Of course, if you don't have the images, you can't check. You can't check this stuff out. However, you can't really say that it is person because you don't have to spend for anything that is free. It is beta testing of image switching, which is free to play. It's completely free as long as you get the card, which most of the things they did were relatively obtained for free to play. Of course, if you didn't play, you didn't play, and of course, then you miss out. But it isn't as bad as the issue that we're currently in, where we have an issues with greed, especially with like Deal Destiny being what they are, and even with the odds, with Deal Destiny, it's still very much low, and Lights Out is the same. Lights Out is so much lower, lower and potentially more costly as well than Deal Destiny ever was, really. Because I mean, you shouldn't need to buy 3 lives. I think a good quality of life change to Destiny is have 3 or 5 lives, and that is it. Like, if you lose at if you lose 3 lives, that is it. You lose 3 lives, and you can't continue, and you get what you get. Of course, I understand people can lose straight away, and there is no effort to that. But I also think there shouldn't be a pay price. People should only have to pay if they want to do it again, such as completing, not completing it, but like having access to it again. So like what we always have, like the packs and stuff, like the limit of 5 or whatever. I think that is fair enough because people still may want to spend on such thing, which of course is, is how they would make money. Pull rates for titles necessary to advance WrestleMania Forever event is very low. Deal Destiny 1%, 2%, 5%, 10%. Lights Out slightly better. The other pull rates don't increase between gold and platinum, and even that isn't guaranteed without pulling credits into the game, as I've said earlier in the post. The mods for this tier feel predatory and designed to extract the most profit, take enjoyment, and making this secure. And they did, I talked about the profit maximization, and that is what they're doing, and this is what this person's basically talking about in a more focused way, rather than a sort of collective way. And I do agree with the fact that it should not be a predatory. I think it should be not predatory, but I also think there should be a balance between the free-to-plays and the pay-to-wins, of course. But yeah, feel free to talk about the stuff in a in the comments, of course, about the conversation out elsewhere as well to big content creators or whatever. Feel free to share this video out. But yeah, this has been my Supercard, and a goodbye.